Okay, cool. Well, thank you everyone for bearing with us this morning. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most critical conversations shaping our future, sustainable transportation. In today's rapidly evolving world, transportation is not just a backbone of global commerce and connectivity. It also plays a pivotal role in addressing some of humanity's greatest challenges: climate change, resource depletion, and urban congestion. The business and logistics sectors are particularly vulnerable to these disruptions, but also uniquely positioned to drive transformative change. Globally, the transportation sector contributes nearly 24% of energy-related CO2 emissions, with commercial vehicles being significant contributors due to their reliance on fossil fuels. As cities like Singapore grow denser and supply chains more complex, the environmental and social costs of traditional transport modes are becoming unsustainable. So sustainable transportation isn't really about reducing emissions, it's about unlocking economic resilience, enhancing operational efficiency, and meeting consumer demands for greener practices. And today we'll explore how Singapore, a hub for innovation and sustainability, is paving the way towards cleaner, smarter mobility solutions through electric commercial vehicles. And to guide this conversation today, I'm joined by three esteemed panelists who represent different facets of the electric commercial vehicle ecosystem. So let me invite them to introduce themselves briefly. To my left, first, we have Mr. Jerome Ang, General Manager of BYD Commercial Vehicles at Inchcape Plus. Jerome, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in advancing electric vehicles in Singapore?
Okay, thanks, PingPing. Can you hear me well? Okay, thanks for inviting Inchcape into this event. It is our honor to be here. Maybe I will start off with a little bit introduction about Inchcape. Okay, so Inchcape is an automotive company in Singapore. So we have been here for many years. We have been handling brands like Toyota, Lexus, Suzuki, Hino trucks. So last year we started a new partnership with BYD, and in this partnership, we are representing them for the commercial vehicles. Yeah. In January, last month, we actually launched our first BYD T9R truck in Singapore. So T9R is a heavy vehicle, which is actually a new product in Singapore commercial vehicle. It's a 28-ton GVW vehicle, big, suitable for logistics and many other applications. So we actually brought a vehicle here today at level 1. So later when we have the time, please approach me or any of my colleagues. We would love to bring you down to have a look at the heavy vehicle. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerome. Next, we are thrilled to welcome Mr. Patrick Wong, Managing Director of GoGoX. Patrick, please share with us a brief overview of GoGoX's growth journey in Singapore and the number of years that your organization has been contributing to sustainable logistics.
First of all, PingPing, thank you for inviting me. I've known PingPing, I think, close to 10 years. Multiple different startups. Happy to be in this community with her. In my conversation today, I think you'll hear two things: ecosystem and community. I think sitting here, we have that ecosystem that supports each other in terms of what we're trying to do. But without ecosystem, or even without this community, I think when like-minded people come together, I think that's critical. GoGoX, some of you may be familiar or not, we are an on-demand app, a delivery app platform. So think Grab moves people, we move things. We have two parts of our business: the app, the on-demand app for consumers as well as businesses. The other one is what we do, contract logistics. So what this means is, for example, IKEA. If you bought any furniture from Alexandra, it's delivered by GoGoX. We deliver meal subscription for Nutrition Kitchen. We deliver Giga SIM card. And Friday was Valentine's Day, so if you receive bouquets from Floristic, it was delivered by us. And as far as I know today, 100% successful, no complaints. That, in essence, what we do.
Thank you, Patrick. And last but not least, with all ecosystems, we need an infrastructure player to aggregate everyone in the ecosystem. And this time we are speaking about a digital infrastructure, enabling ease of electric charging We're excited to have Mr. Jacek Soh, CEO, co-founder of Beep. So Jacek, please share a little bit about yourself and how Beep came to develop its e-mobility arm, Voltality. Jacek, please.
Sure. Thanks for having me. So as PingPing mentioned, we have Beep and we have Voltality. So Beep started in 2018 when the e-tron first launched, I guess. But back in Southeast Asia, EV adoption wasn't so strong yet. So when we started, we actually looked at enabling connectivity for modern payment systems and data visibility for vending machines. So I think the more obvious work that we did was during the COVID pandemic. If you picked up your mask or test kit or contact tracing token, like Trace Together token from vending machines, the software connectivity was enabled by us. So our main problem that we were trying to solve for vending machines was that vending operators buy machines from different providers and they have different technical capabilities. So when you want to support local context, so like pay now or QR payments, and when you want data that's streamlined across different machines, then it's difficult for these players to do so with all the different systems. So we built a hardware and software platform to combine that, where it's, okay, it doesn't matter that you have different types of machines, it doesn't matter that one is 20 years old and one is new off the factory line. You have one platform to do payments and you have one platform to do data. And then eventually during the COVID pandemic, you have one platform to do distribution or identification, stuff like that. So we carried it over into Voltality. So Voltality is our e-mobility arm. We started R&D in 2021. That's the year when Singapore government actually came out and said, we're going to do 60,000 charging stations by 2030. We're going to do no more pure ICE sales by 2030, all these kinds of EV friendly. So if you remember before that, maybe like 2018, 2017 or before that, Singapore was called out, but also by Elon Musk to say, why is a Tesla so much more expensive, so unfriendly to EV? And I think the government did an about face in 2021 onwards. And because of that, we started seeing, opinion articles of very early adopters saying, how hard it is for them to actually charge the EV because there's so many different providers. Back then, maybe only 4 or 5 providers, but they were complaining already, saying, I've downloaded many apps to be able to charge. And, I used to have to, as a merchant, maybe download many apps to support e-wallets also. For example, when you're talking about 2017, 2018, if you recall, there were a lot of e-wallets coming out. And then the government came in and said, we're going to create Pay Now, and we're going to create SGQR, and one QR can solve all the payments. I don't need to have one app to pay for one QR. I can have any app and I can pay for the same QR. So we wanted to have the same concept where we don't want it to be a high friction point for players to be able to charge their car. Because today in Singapore, you have like 20 plus to 30 operators running charging stations. Across Southeast Asia, it's the same problem. Each operator has their own app, they have their own UI, they have their own network, they have their own payment methods and everything like that. And so as a driver, if I pay petrol, I just need to use a credit card, I get a lot of points, or I use cash. But if I pay for charging, I need to actually download all the different apps and I need to sign up for them. And if I want to find a charging station, I need to flip through all of them. Can I have one platform? And so we want to build a gateway that connects to all of these different operators, but we work with either a super app or the car manufacturer or the distributor or even the fleet platform, and we give them the connectivity to enable charging. So we don't build our own app, we enable partners to use their own platform to find the charging stations to pay for it. So it's a bit of a long explanation, but I think the closest analogy we have is that if you book your hotel or your travel tickets today and you use Trip.com, Booking.com, Agoda, all these players, there is actually a player behind Trip.com or Booking.com. There are players called Global Distribution Systems, so GDS, so players like Sabre, Amadeus. You haven't heard of them before, but they actually enable Trip.com to let you find and book hotels and book the planes and everything like that. So we're trying to be that kind of Amadeus or Sabre platform to enable partners to do the charging.
Thank you for that, Jacek. So let's now dive into the heart of the matter. There's been a lot of buzz around the rise of electric commercial vehicles, but I understand that they usually come at a higher price compared to the conventional diesel ICE trucks. So Jerome, could you share with us some of your clients' insights and motivations when they purchase an electric truck from you?
okay, cost is always one of the first decision-making factors in all businesses. No doubt, at the moment, the heavy vehicles climate is a little bit different from the lighter weight electric vehicles. There isn't any incentive right now from the government side to help to subsidize some of the upfront costs. So a lot of times, I mean, as a ballpark example, if you compare our electric truck versus ICE truck, it could be something like 2.5 to 3 times more. Yeah. So to convince customers, we will normally do a total TCO with them, total cost of ownership with them. So over 10 years, we will study all their operational costs, maintenance costs, and put it together on the table. Yeah. So actually, everybody's operating conditions will be very different. Yeah. That will be a break-even point for everybody. And sometimes this helps them to make a better decision. And a lot of times we also face, we meet customers who have sustainability goals, okay? So at the back of their mind, they really want to go into this green journey. And yeah, so the TCO will help them to lay out their expenses over the years and convince them to take the plunge. Besides that, I think we also have been talking with a lot of authorities. Okay, so recently, I think charges are also a big cost. When they want to go green. Yeah, we do have some indication from authorities that they are going to start looking into heavy vehicle car parks, whereby they could start installing some chargers. So this would help some of the smaller players, to leash and to utilize public car parks for their charging needs, besides building in their depots. Yeah.
So on this note, thank you, Jerome. This help paints a clear picture of why businesses would see value in making the switch as they consider the initial cost. So just out of curiosity, when you do the TCO and moving forward for the day, you're going to hear a lot of like alphabet soups, right? So TCO, just to clarify, total cost of ownership. ICE, internal combustion engines, which is the cars that we are driving now today, basically, right? So just curious, Jerome, a quick one. You mentioned that when comparing EV trucks and diesel trucks, running costs over a long period of time, approximately how much lesser or higher? You like, just out of curiosity.
For operational costs, will be like your daily running costs, which mainly make up of your diesel costs versus the electricity costs.
Correct.
So on that component itself, you should be able to see a 30 to 40% reduction in your running costs.
So 30 to 40% reduction running costs, not bad. So maybe that will be how businesses can see value in making the switch, despite the initial cost, right? So moving on a little bit, Patrick, turning to you. GoGoX has been proactive in adopting electrification across parts of its fleet. Could you share with us roughly which year GoGoX started adopting electric fleets, and what motivated this decision with which client, and what lessons have you learned along the way with the team?
Thanks for that. I think just to add on to what you were talking about, total cost of ownership. There's this whole thing about ESG, right? And everybody knows. I would like to add a P behind, and this is a conversation that has been in different panels. Profit or planet, right? So should it be profit or planet? But someone said it's not either or. It can be profit with planet, profit and planet. I run a business, right? Unfortunately, sometimes we see short-term goals, as in profitability, sustainability in terms of the business, right? The question is, how much then do we invest in getting a vehicle that may cost more upfront, but the savings, total cost of ownership, is throughout the last 10 years. 10 years being because Singapore is tied to the COE. So there's always that discussion, right? And for us, a lot of our drivers are independent contractors or smaller companies with 1 or 2 vehicles. They also look at costs, and sustainability to a certain extent is not their immediate priority. But for us, we serve clients, right? So she said proactive. Unfortunately, we're not proactive in terms of, I don't go out and get 10 vehicles and tell the world, hey, I got 10 electric vehicles, come use us. I'm a bit passive. Our organization is passive in the sense that we serve clients. So when clients come to us with demands or requests, that's when we co-create a solution, right? At the end of the day, someone has to pay for that. Because clients don't give me a 10-year contract, so I don't see the TCO, right? So going back to the question, our first client on the sustainability project was actually with IKEA. And this was back in 2021. We had a partnership with Cycle and Carriage. Not you guys, but Cycle and Carriage. And this was just after during COVID, when they had vehicles, but they couldn't sell because COVID lockdown, and we had a lot of demand in terms of the delivery. So, cut the long story short, IKEA, on to the consumer side of things, there are 3 consumer deliveries. Kitchen, which is done in-house. Bulky furniture, where you buy the sofa and the beds, is done by us or another company out of Tampines. And then the smaller items is parcel. Anything you buy small, tea light candles, couple of towels, comes in a box. Parcels, that's done by us 100%, and that's 100% emission free. So that means full electric fleet doing those deliveries. So when IKEA came to us 2020, hey, we've got this plan, this goals, 2030, and we need to do all this. We came in and said, hey, let us do this for you. Marginal increase in price. I mean, guess what? From then till now, 1/3 of their sustainability KPIs already met, way ahead. So IKEA was happy. Again, unfortunately for us in our environment, vehicles, it's a high cost because of the COE, and so we have to balance that equation with the client. In terms of working with IKEA, we are now going on in plans to work on the other sustainable goals. So in terms of the home delivery side of things, and again, to add a bit of color, he has brought in a heavy vehicle, super heavy, and it's the huge trucks. A lot of the vehicles that you see are actually the electric vans. So that's more common because you can charge in public charging infrastructures. Whereas for his, you can't drive in the HDB car park and power. You can't drive in the Shell and charge. Or maybe you could, yeah. So we work on the electric vehicles, on the vans, to do those deliveries. So we're working with CARE to come up with plans in stages to roll out emission-free deliveries on the bulky furniture side of things.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that, Patrick. It's very inspiring to hear that already meeting the goals way in advance through the transition and adoption of electric fleets. So, and for the benefit of those in the audience, myself included, who may not be deeply familiar with the transportation and logistics industry, Jacek, could you help shed some light on the current state of charging infrastructure for commercial vehicles in Singapore? And how exactly is BEEP working to bridge the gap between business efficiency and reliable accessibility to charging support?
Sure. So I think as Patrick mentioned, when you think about commercial vehicles, you have your light vehicles and you also have your heavy vehicles. So typically you start with four-wheelers, your vans, that generally the dimension is similar to a passenger car, like a big SUV, stuff like that. And then you go to four-wheeler jumbos, you go to six-wheelers, you go to trucks, and then you go all the way to prime movers, which are the container haulers, right? They shift from ports all the way into big depots where they typically then break bulk. They break bulk into smaller vehicles and then they do shipments out, for example. A bit less common in Singapore to see prime movers. Within PSA, within certain port locations they exist, but on the regular roads not so common, right? So in Singapore, more of your vans and then to your bigger trucks. And when it comes to charging, when you think about infrastructure rollout that has happened since 2021, SP started rolling out EV charging and Shell a bit earlier than that, but 2021 is when the government shifted hard towards, okay, we want to do EVs, and that's where a lot of companies came in. So most of the charging installed today, they are installed with passenger car considerations. What does that mean? It means that the size of the lot is generally for a passenger car. The length of the cable is generally for a passenger car. The charging speed is generally for a passenger car. So usually when you think about HDB parking, the charging speed is 7 kilowatts. So when you think about how fast or how slow 7 is, you need to charge about 9 hours or 10 hours to be able to get maybe 80% charge on a passenger car. When it comes to a truck, the size that is the vehicle downstairs, which Inchcape has brought, 7 kilowatts is going to take you quite literally 40, 50 hours, right? So like not possible, doesn't really work. Usually for a van, overnight charging 7 kilowatts is fine because a van's capacity is very similar to a passenger vehicle and you can charge overnight. But when you think about utilization, how much energy is being used, right? So if I am a regular passenger vehicle, I charge maybe once every 4 or 5 days. If I'm a commercial vehicle, I charge once a day. Or when we work with some private hire drivers, they charge twice a day, full charge. And so there's a huge amount of volume difference. So speed matters also because for delivery drivers, downtime is no money, right? I lose money. And so I don't want to have to dedicate what would have been equivalent of 1 or 2 more trips to charge. And so I need to think about when I charge as well. And so public charging, when you install charging, yes, I need to install in the homes, but that's not going to be overnight. So I need to also install in shopping centers. I also need to install in food court areas next to places where people take a break and stuff like that. And that can work for vans because if I'm a delivery driver, I still need to eat. I still need to go to the toilet, right? So like if I'm eating for 45 minutes and I have a food court and next to that food court is a HDB car park, and that car park actually I purposely install fast charging, which now HDB is starting to do, right? So they're starting to target fast charging. Where it's 60 kilowatt, 120 kilowatt. Then yes, in the half an hour, 45 minutes that I am parked and eating, my car is also eating, it's also recharging. And then I get a full charge and I go along my way and then I do my deliveries and I go home and then maybe it's back down to 20, 30%. Then I charge overnight again, it's full the next day. So I need coverage across different parts of the ecosystem, the different locations to be able to allow for such passenger vehicle charging. But for trucks, there's other requirements. I need a minimum height of the space. I need a minimum length because if I drive a regular, full-size truck into a passenger vehicle space to charge, I might take up 2 or 3 lots. I need a minimum cable length. Maybe when I park my vehicle, 1 point something 2 meter cable might not be enough for me to plug into the vehicle. I need maybe 5 meters cables. So all these kinds of considerations. I need a minimum 120 kilowatt speed. There's all these things that usually you don't think about when you start installing or charging. And so there's not that many stations that has this capability. We see that also in other countries like Thailand, right? So we have a similar, kind of use case where you have prime movers, big trucks, and we also have public charging networks that we work with. Maybe we have about 2,000 over stations connected on the platform today. But when we filter for the requirements of a 6-wheeler, of a truck, and we say, you need a certain minimum length, certain minimum height, certain minimum speed, you realize that out of 2,000 stations, maybe there's only 50 stations, 60 stations that can fit. So there is a gap in Singapore and in Southeast Asia for commercial charging beyond a van, beyond a 4-wheeler. And I think awareness needs to be present not just in the infrastructure side, not just in the government side, but also in the operators, people who install the stations. And actually there's this need. Yeah.
So it sounds to me that Beep is building out a platform that will enable the commercial businesses to discover and access all the variety of charging points island-wide, whether it's in Singapore or through the client that you are now serving in Thailand, right? So now that since we are on the topic of charging, let's address another concern that often goes hand in hand, range anxiety. Jerome, perhaps you could share with us a little bit, with advancements in battery technology, how far can electric trucks go today? Have we reached a point where EVs can meet the demands of most logistic operations in Singapore?
Okay. First of all, I want to touch upon a pain point that Jacek brought out. Yeah, when we started to bring in this heavy vehicle, which is a 10-wheeler, after a while we need to charge the vehicle. So we were actually searching around for chargers across different apps. It's quite painful, to keep on switching apps. And when we identify a place, when we reach there, we realized actually it's a dual charging bay, okay? But it is actually catered for passenger cars, yeah. And we started charging, and then the other vehicles started coming, and we actually hold up all the other people who came to charge, yeah. So it is something great, and that you're building, and you're really fixing all the pain points in the industry, yeah. Chargers are not so ready yet, for heavy vehicles. Hopefully we will take the next step going forward. Yeah. Okay. So coming back to the question about range anxiety. Yeah. Most of the time whenever my team, we meet up with customers, first question is always, what is your range? Okay. So actually BYD T9R that we are distributing in Singapore is the third generation, okay, of this model. The first generation actually came in as early as 2019, okay? So at that point in time, I was involved in the project with my previous company. Yeah, it was the first ever heavy vehicle that is electric vehicle that is brought into Singapore. So even the clearance with LTA, it actually took more than a year just to clear all the specifications, safety standards. Yeah, because at that point in time, it's so early that all the LTA requirements are still built on diesel trucks. So they were asking about what's your engine capacity and stuff like this, which when we tell them, hey, we don't have an engine, so they need to review a lot of their standards. Yeah. So at that point in time, that was the first generation of the BYD truck. It was actually the most advanced technology at the point in time. The battery size is about 200 kilowatt hours. Charging capacity is about 120. Okay, so everything was a little bit state of the art at the point in time. Yeah, when the truck is actually put into operation, okay, it was first used in several NEA contracts as garbage trucks, as hook lift loaders. Okay, when the operators started using, they realized that they do have a limitation on the range. Okay, so comparing to the ICE vehicles, the ICE vehicles can do like 2 trips per day. Okay, when I say trip, it's actually they will collect around the neighborhood. They will do a dump at the incinerator plant, and then they will go for that second round. Yeah. So we did realize that the range was not enough for the second round. So after they do the first dump, they have left about 30-40%. It's not really sufficient to go for the second round. Yeah. So no doubt it has its challenges, but operators are really operators. They will plan their operation around all these limitations. So it's like they could use a first vehicle to do the morning shift, and then the drivers will jump onto a second vehicle to do an afternoon shift. Or they could do an intermediate charging during their lunch hour. Yeah. So things, all these points were actually picked up by BYD. Okay. So now, jumping now into the third generation that we have brought into Singapore. This model was just launched last month. So everything is tip-top kind of specification. So the battery size has increased more than 50%. Okay, so now the battery size is 302 kilowatt hours. It's 50% more. Driving range have increased from 200 kilometers to 320 kilometers. Okay, so at 320 kilometers, it can actually fulfill, I guess, 99% of everybody's operation. From our understanding, a typical logistic company could be doing like 150 to 180 kilometers, right? Thereabouts, yeah. So it is more than sufficient with sufficient spare battery to also overcome the range anxiety aspect that comes along with EV trucks. Besides that, actually, technology has moved quite a lot. For the BYD first generation, it was actually using industrial grade lithium-ion batteries. But now for the Gen 3 version, we are using blade batteries, BYD blade batteries, which is the same batteries that use in their passenger cars. Okay, so with that blade battery, actually, the energy density, the efficiency is so much improved. Yeah, and when we talk about blade battery, maybe some of you have seen the famous video on YouTube whereby there was a comparison between the industrial grade lithium-ion battery, doing the near penetration test. So in that video, the near penetration test on a typical lithium-ion battery will actually, when penetrated, it will shoot up to 600 degrees and continue combustion. Okay, because the surrounding cells will get affected and it will keep burning. But the video also showed BYD blade battery going through the same near penetration test. So the temperature actually shoot up to 60 degrees, stabilize, and comes back down. Yeah. So that's why BYD blade battery has one of the highest safety standards around the world, to the extent that there are also other automotive companies that actually buy from them. Yeah.
That's great to hear. Thanks for sharing, Jerome. So blade battery improvements, helping to increase for longer range driving. And just now there was some mention a little bit about route planning also. And I want to pose this question to Patrick. From a service provider standpoint, how would you say businesses can mitigate range anxiety, like practically, when you're handling the logistics? I saw you smiling just now when Jerome was saying, the range has increased from, was it 150 to 320 kilometers? So Patrick, please share with us what you think.
Okay, good. Let me, for consumers like yourself and lay people, I think so. And let me share a bit of on the delivery logistics side of things. Some deliveries you get, your typical Shoppies of the world, you buy, you don't know when it will come, right? It'll probably come 3 days, 5 days later, and you'll just drop it at your door. Some customers, for example, like IKEA, you can book a day, and they'll give you a 3-hour time slot, 9 to 12. So from a logistics, sustainability, and she used the word route optimization point of view, the Shopee delivery was almost free. It was like $1.99, right? Whereas if you buy a different brand, it may cost you $5 or $10. What this means is, take for example, this road. What Shopee does is, or Ninja Van, JT Express, you will see them on the roads. They do consolidation. That means they will try to consolidate all the orders for this road, as many as possible, and then on, say, Wednesday, one van will do 100 deliveries here. And it's the whole day, and there's no time constraint. So I take my time, I just drop. Whereas if you look at, say, IKEA, it's Wednesday at 9 to 12, chances are there's only one delivery here. So I can't charge, or IKEA or the brand cannot pay $1.99 for this one trip, right? Because that van has 100 orders at $1.99, who earns that money. Whereas IKEA, for example, comes over and it's only one order for that particular time slot on this street. So the price is different. So from a cost perspective, if you have time slot delivery, or worse, if you say instant, like same day express 2-hour delivery, prices are very different. Coming back to range anxiety, when we first deployed the electric van, there was a lot of learning for us. So for example, one of our van drivers, our in-house driver, drives home the van. He lives in Punggol. But his first pickup in the morning was at Penjuru on the west. It was on the west side, yes, Jukun, sorry. So he has to travel from Punggol all the way to the west to do his pickup, right? Easily, and this is second battery, second generation, 25%, 30% already gone. And then he takes from the west, and he has to come somewhere to the central CBD area to do the deliveries, right? So what happened was through that learning, he had to charge, right? Lunchtime. And in most cases, I think this was about a year back, it was largely AC charges. So very hard. Even for a DC charger, at most you charge 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just to get another 30, 40% to do the rest of the deliveries the day. And before he goes home, he needs to spend an hour to charge full so that he starts the next day again. So from a cost perspective, we had to pay for his 1 hour OT, right? And it, again, didn't make sense. So from that learning, what we did was, and with all our electric deliveries today, because we have a mixture of electric and ICE deliveries, we do closer range deliveries. So using Alexandra as an example, IKEA Alexandra, we will go nearby, right? Commonwealth, as far as Jurong, and we come back. So we might do 2 trips, but the range is reasonable and the charging is reasonable. So there's this balance that we look. So from a range anxiety, there's one planning, but from a delivery cost optimization, there's also route optimization planning, right? Think Grab share, right? Instead of going A to B, one trip, I'm going A to B, but I'm picking someone along the way to go to B, right? So that's how cost comes down, and that's how, from a delivery perspective, we try to be sustainable.
Thank you for that, Patrick. So let's shift gears slightly also now and talk about a broader environmental impact. Jerome, could you walk us through a little bit on some of the carbon emission reductions that could be achievable with EV trucks compared with diesel ones?
Okay, we actually did our own internal study, okay? An ICE truck over the course of 10 years of its life, okay, would actually emit about 500 million kilograms of CO2. Okay, that itself will be, to put into a visualization, that's maybe the weight of 200 elephants of CO2 involved. Yeah, so that is actually for every truck, every EV truck that you put onto the road, that's the amount of carbon emission that you can reduce. Okay, I mean, then you imagine a fleet-wide, 30 to 50 vehicles, that is a tremendous amount of carbon emission savings.
That's good to hear. Patrick, just want to pick your brains a little bit also. Could you share with us once again from a service provider's point of view, listed companies would naturally have a mandate towards sustainable transportation goals. And certainly this is a transition journey. And it seems to me that is there a conversation around the broader environmental impact that comes into their consideration as they explore this transition?
Okay, so first of all, GoGoX is Hong Kong listed, so we have reporting and listing requirements. But the truth of the matter is we are just learning. We're scratching the surface in terms of reporting, both from the Hong Kong perspective as well as Singapore's perspective. That's why we're relying on the ecosystem to help us do the tracking. But again, I would very transparent. It's very superficial today. I wouldn't say it's greenwashing, but it's very superficial. We're learning, taking baby steps in terms of reporting and tracking what we're generating today. But we're happy to work with partners like IKEA to be able to start on this journey. We're learning as much from them as much as they are learning from us.
That's great to hear. Well, anyways, you're already, was it 1/3 ahead of
IKEA, no, that's IKEA.
IKEA, yeah. That's IKEA. So kudos to IKEA, buy more from IKEA, I guess. Then moving to Jacek, could you share with us some views on how your clients are partnering you to deliver any environmental impact? Talk to us a little bit about the client that you and the team are serving from Thailand.
So I think I want to tie back to what Patrick mentioned on his case study, right, where the driver stays in the east and then he has to go to the west and then he has to circle back, and then at that time AC charging, and probably there wasn't a AC charger at his home, so he had to actually do an overtime to charge. And so as a result, what the companies do is they change their behavior, they change the route planning. See the same thing. So a lot of the times when the companies first adopt EVs, because of a lot of limitations on public charging, a lot of limitations on range, a lot of limitations on misunderstanding of how batteries function and the durability. Like, you're not supposed to actually use a battery from 100% to 0% and 100% to 0%. You keep doing that, your battery health will drop faster. Very similar to smartphones. You usually iPhone smart charging, Android smart charging will say throttle at 80% and then, cut in at 20% low power. Why do they do all this? Because actually it will lengthen the battery's lifespan, and that factors into TCO directly. So how long your battery lasts is how long how good your TCO is. So we don't want to end up with a scenario where you have adoption stuck at 20 or 30% because you can only do certain routes. You can only change certain parts of your ecosystem to fit the EV. You want the EV to fit you rather than you fit the EV. So when we look at the case study that we're doing in Thailand, they are one of the largest industrial park developers, and they have industrial parks across Thailand. So the range between those parks can be 600 km, 700 km, because it's a huge range, right, in Thailand. And they have set up an entire new arm to facilitate e-mobility adoption. So they bring in four-wheelers all the way up to prime movers, including the kind of trucks that Inchcape brings in here in Singapore. And they install ultra-fast chargers. So here in Singapore, 120, 180 kilowatt is fast, ultra fast, right? But in Thailand, when they install those chargers, 360 kilowatt, right? So, beyond rapid here, right? But they still have the problem. I can't drive point to point. It's not enough. And one more thing is that, in the logistics industry, you have fixed route planning and you have variable route planning, right? So the fixed route is a bit easier. You know roughly what the distance is. You know roughly, how much utilization every day. But with Thailand, they don't always have fixed routes. So they also have variable route. So the challenge is variable route, very long distances, and EV, pure EV. And so they are trying to build depot charging, but we're trying to help them build out the connectivity between the depot charging so that I can top up in petrol stations that now have EV chargers. I can top up in maybe big shopping lots where there's open air car parks and there's big charging spaces and stuff like that. Finding and communicating with landlords. In Thailand, a very common thing is auto dealerships. They're starting to install EV charging stations. They tend to be fast, but maybe there's not the right space for it because it's meant for the kind of vehicle of the auto dealer, which is usually not a commercial dealer, but we're trying to see whether we can communicate with them and say, hey, actually, maybe during evening, off-peak hours, you can let trucks come in and charge, stuff like that. So communication is key. We're trying to enable the more freedom and ability for operators to say, okay, hopefully one day, a driver that stays in Punggol can still do that route because why? Oh, when he goes home, there's a charger. He charges overnight. There's no need to OT. And then when he goes to eat at a food court, there's a 120 kilowatt charger. So even if he only charges for half an hour, it's 80% instead of 30% battery, right? Then this kind of capability will allow players like GoGoX here in Singapore, but also let's say players in Thailand to say, okay, now 50% of my routes, 70% of my routes, 80% of my routes, 100% of my routes can support EVs. And then together with doubling of the range, increasing of the speed of charging, all of this can then make adoption more palatable, right? So it's not just about cost. Yes, it's very important, but it's also about operational feasibility. Yeah.
So it sounds like the platform Voltality that you and the team are building out in helping to facilitate the connectivity, discoverability, accessibility, that's your contribution to the broader environmental positive impact.
That's a good summary, yes. Thank you.
Cool. So to wrap up our main discussion, if there was only one takeaway you would each like our audience to bring home with them, in terms of viewing sustainable transportation, what would each of your suggestion be? Maybe we can start with Jacek.
So I think firstly, if you're considering getting a new car, please choose an EV. And I think in general it takes a mindset shift. When you shift from ICE to EV, the behavior of recharging will be different. I think there will be a need for people to learn the right charging etiquette, not to hog the charger, things like that. But I think going with an open mind to trying a new experience, to embrace that shift in not looking at the effort that's already been put in by the industry to build out the infrastructure, to bring down the cost, things about range anxiety, stuff like that, even for passengers, vehicles. I think an openness to try and to even maybe, there's rental platforms, Get Go, Tribeca. You can try renting an EV for a day and experiencing it to understand what it's like. And hopefully that will help you have a more open mind to shift for passengers. Yeah.
Okay, 2 points, and I'd like to share this. So I think from a delivery person perspective, I want all of you as lay people, the next time the guy brings your Grab food, he's late, don't complain. The guy is in the heat, he's in the rain, give the guy a small tip. A little tip goes a long way, right? Just to share a bit, the Valentine's Day delivery, my colleague and myself, Ganga, we did 27 deliveries, 2 waves. So we took from Ubi area and we drove to Pasir Ris Tampines, which is the zone that I'm familiar with. So 27 deliveries. We talked about charging 45 minutes. We didn't have time for lunch, right? Literally, we took a McDonald's burger and I was munching the burger back to the car park, right? Because the base was calling us, hey, when are you coming back? We've got a second route. And why we had a second wave was because people could still order in the morning to have it delivered in the afternoon, right? So that was a service the brand offered to consumers. You as a consumer wanted that service. But guess what? There was also office deliveries which had to be delivered before 5 or else we'll miss, right? So all these constraints sometimes affects the delivery timing. So be kind. Second thing, he mentioned earlier, how many million kilograms of carbon, right? It's not because of the truck. It's because of all of this. Because I always tell, I leave this with the panel, right? We wear 2 hats. One, all of us sit here today as practitioners, right? Ecosystem, community, sustainability. But then at home, we're all consumers. Do we need another handphone cover? Do we need to buy another t-shirt from Shein, right? All that consumerism, it's actually generating this carbon footprint. So just think the next time you make a purchase. Right? Yeah.
All right. From the industry side, right now we have this heavy vehicle, 28-ton GVW, perfect for your 24-foot cargo boxes. Maybe we can take down another 1/3 of IKEA's sustainability together. Yeah. And actually, I wanted to bring to the market that at the end of this year, we are going to bring in more BYD products. We are going to bring in the 10-footers and possibly the 14-footers. Okay, so there will be more options open up to the market. Okay, we believe this will help the green environmental growth in Singapore. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerome, Patrick, Jacek, for sharing all your invaluable perspectives. And to our audience, I hope today's discussion has inspired you to think a little bit more critically about the role of sustainable transportation as we shape a greener, more resilient future. And let's continue this important conversation beyond this room. And with that, I'll hand over back to our MC, Kirby. Thank you.
Round of applause, please.